This book contains explicit conversations of a sexual nature and is not suitable for minors under age 17. The Parallel World. We have no choice into whom, where, and when we are born. The fact is that many of us are born into situations that in many cases do not give us the best opportunities in life. Some situations that people are born into are hopeless from the beginning to the end, and short of a miracle, they are doomed at birth. Well, we all know that miracles are very, very hard to come by. So what can a hopeless, beautiful soul do? In many cases, because we know no better, we don't do better. For that reason, I believe that there must be parallel worlds. Worlds that the same souls are born into but rendering different results. For every person who was born into this world to circumstances that rendered them doomed at birth and their life path went wrong, there is a parallel world where they were born to circumstances where everything went right in their life path. You are still the same person because of your astrological celestial realm. For me in this world, I was born to two people who were ill-equipped to be good parents, and for that reason, perhaps doomed at birth. My father, who passed away in 2001, was not really in my life. I know that he loved me because as long as I could remember, I would get phone calls from him throughout the years. Unfortunately for him and for me, his life experiences left him psychologically and physically unstable, and I was only able to see him once during his lifetime. My mother was a very strong-willed, determined person who never showed her feelings much. Her childhood trauma and life experiences caused her to become a very self-centered, selfish person who also had a mean streak. She was severely physically abusive to her children because she herself was severely physically abused when she was a child, and that was the only way she knew. She was also severely depressed and coped with life in the best way that she could. Despite her misfortune and misgivings in life, I know that she loved us, even though it was hard for her to express it. Coming from the situation that I was born in left me with not much nurturing and guidance. Even though I made some good decisions for my life, or at least what I thought was good decisions at that time, there was not much support, which kept me constantly in a hole and always trying to dig myself out, but never getting anywhere much, and sometimes making the hole a little deeper. I made the hole deeper by not carefully choosing a good mate. Yes, there were signs, but I at the time was not wise enough to see them and understand the consequences of a bad decision. Nor did I even know at the time that the decisions I made were bad decisions and would render me worse off in life. In this world, I was unfortunate. Luckily for me and all of the unfortunate souls of this world, the parallel world yields opposite results. My life path in the parallel world led me to my soulmate. Every soul has a soulmate, another soul that is almost the mirror of you, but where one lacks, the other fills, because there is an instinctual understanding of what the other needs. In Greek mythology, Plato presents his explanation of how soulmates were created in a philosophical text called Symposium. To make a long story short, there were once androgynous humans from the moon who had male and female genitals in every single human. During that time, humans were stronger than the gods and were planning to conquer the gods. The gods decided that they would not destroy the humans because of this, but instead would split them in half for punishment. The humans were split in half and were so miserable without their other half that they would not eat, and they perished. Apollo then decides to sew each half up, reconstructing their bodies with a navel being the only reminder of their old form, and they would only have one genitalia. The humans would then always long for the other half of their soul. It goes on to say that when the two find each other, There will be an unspoken understanding of each other. They will be together in unity and will know no other greater joy. A pretty elaborate story, but it makes complete sense to me. There are many various definitions of soulmates. My definition of a soulmate is when you meet your soulmate, there will be an instinctual feeling of knowing. It will be like love at first sight, but a feeling. Yes, I believe that my soulmate is in this world during this age and time, and I think I may know who he is. Have you ever met or knew of someone whom you felt an instinctual understanding with, and felt that they would be perfect for you, and you knew that you could be perfect for them? You felt that they could be your soulmate. However, in this case, I knew that there wasn't a chance in hell that I would ever get the opportunity to be a part of that person's life in this world. Why not? Because in this case, our life paths in this world were quite literally so far apart physically and circumstantially. Physically because he is from a completely different continent than I. He was born on the island of Madagascar, an island off the east coast of Africa, and I was born in New York, USA. Circumstantially because in this world he was guided to fame, and I was born into a pool of confusion and ignorance. Therefore, in this world of life circumstances that we were born into, it did not lead us to a chance encounter between us. One would say, so why him? You don't know anything about this person but what is shown in public, which is only what they want the public to see. Well, because I feel a natural connection with him. I know him being who he is. A lot of people may feel a connection and attraction to him. So what makes my connection and attraction to him so special? Nothing really, but I just have this feeling that if we were given an opportunity to have had a chance encounter, we would have had this natural and deep attraction to each other because our spirits would be one and the same. Sometimes when you meet someone, you can feel their spirit as soon as you meet them, and it is in sync with yours. That is what would have happened to us. Maybe we were connected before we were born, because we came from the same astrological celestial realm. We are from the same zodiac stars, the same sign. For me, there is definitely a physical attraction, and I will venture to say I'm sure he would have had a physical attraction to me also. When I look at his interviews, it seems that we have the same approach to life, this way of gliding through life with wisdom, looking at all aspects of a situation before we come to our conclusions about something. As children, we were quiet, taking it all in, analyzing our situations and the people around us. We are thinkers, and we love to ponder, analyze, and break down issues, then weigh which answer or approach would render the best results. Even though we came from two very different lives, him being loved from the beginning, me not so much so, we still are the same in the way that we react to people. We care about people, despite how they may treat us. We forgive easily and are peacemakers. We love to love and care for who and what we love. We love nature and care about the world. We don't like confrontation and will sometimes give in for the sake of avoiding it. This can sometimes cause people to think that we are pushovers, but we are far from that. When we have done everything that we can do to get along, have looked at all sides and there still is no harmony, we are completely done and there is no turning back. Maintaining balance in our lives is a must. We don't like fake or phony and won't have it in our lives. One would probably say that I have just described aspects of many people who are of our same zodiac sign. That may be true, but the connection I feel with him goes a little deeper. I feel a oneness, like we are the same even though we came from different parts of the world. A big part of that oneness is our similar personalities. However, another part of it is our similar cultures. There are many subcultures that have been created within a society. In societies such as America, Britain, Australia, and even in Africa, subcultures are created by different ethnicities. For example, there are many African subcultures that have been created in many different parts of the world, and they are all similar to each other, and in many cases have been ruled over by a greater European society. What makes them similar is part ethnicity and part society. They are like extended family, cousins. In this case, we have the same taste in music because of our ethnicities, and we were raised listening to some of the same and similar music, like African and reggae music, Black American music, and African and Black church music. He once mentioned in one of his interviews that his family was always in the music business through church. It is the same situation with me. My family was in the local music business through church, which was the case with most Black people that started out in the music business during the times of our childhood raising. My mother and another sister of hers played the piano, and my grandfather loved to sing in church. My mother raised us singing in church, and she formed a junior choir, and then later her own gospel group called the Angelic Voices. My brother, sister, and I participated in all of it. I have always loved to sing and would sing over records, looking in a mirror and holding a brush for a mic. My mother always made me sing in the background, and I found that I love background singing. However, she never gave me the opportunity to solo in a song, and I'm not sure why, even though I have been told by different people who had heard me sing that I have a pretty voice and was a good singer. We both were also raised in a country-like atmosphere and have an affinity for it. However, during my early childhood, I was raised in the northern part of the U.S., in New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, and then in a small southern town in Georgia during my adolescent years. I remember all throughout my childhood and adolescent years, us as a family traveling by car to the south when we lived in the north, and traveling to the north during the summers when we lived in the south. My grandfather owned a 70-acre farm where he farmed and raised his 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls, in that little small town in Georgia. My mother was the youngest girl, and she has a brother who was the youngest. My grandfather planted, as far as I can remember, black-eyed peas, green beans, lima beans, potatoes, sugar cane, corn, collards, squash, and much more. He also had an apple, peach, plum trees, wild blackberries, and pecan trees. He had cows, pigs, chickens, a horse, and dogs. When my mother was a child, he planted cotton, and yes, they picked cotton and everything else. His farm was like a little community. My grandfather was one of the first African Americans to buy land in that area in the late 30s. At that time, the government would build a house on a parcel of land and sold it for people to cultivate. When he purchased the land, he built houses for some of his extended family to live in and work for him. He opened a little grocery store, and he had a juke joint, which was a hangout spot for people to come and play music, drink, and dance. It was the country people's nightclub during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I remember dirt roads, shack houses, clear night skies with millions of stars, beautiful blue day skies, and trees blowing in the wind. There were beautiful warm spring days with beautiful flowers blooming, the sweet smell of flowers, honeysuckle, and maypops. I remember playing in the dirt and mud, running around and playing with my cousins, having to go to the fields and pick peas and other stuff on hot sunny days. We would be eating big, ripe, juicy peaches, watermelon, green apples, plums, and blackberries. But you would have to take the blackberries and soak them in water, because they would be full of ants, and the ants would come floating to the top. Sometimes on days when we didn't go to the fields, we would sit under the big pecan tree in the front yard around early evening, just before sunset, a bunch of us, each with a bowl and shelling peas, talking and laughing and watching the beautiful sunset. I remember going to church, hearing the sounds of the old hymns and songs they used to sing with no music, just patting their feet and singing in harmony and having long, long prayers. I mistakenly joined the church at a very young age by following my older cousins, when the preacher asked for people to come if they wanted to give their life to Jesus. I remember singing in the choir, songs that sound similar to other subcultural African church music as I look back in retrospect. There were church services, like when the church would celebrate their anniversary, the church packed and overflowing. I would be dressed in a pretty A-line flare dress with tights and pan leather shoes, hair slicked up with water and grease in pretty little ponytails with ribbon bows. There were tables after tables of food like collards, lima beans, black-eyed peas, and snap peas with okra, squash, cabbage, fried chicken, ham, ribs, potato salad, apple pies, peach cobbler, cherry pies, blackberry pies, coconut cake, upside-down pineapple cake, chocolate cake, red velvet cake, pound cake, cornbread pie, and of course, cornbread. We would be running around in the churchyard, playing, and looking at the boys and maybe having a little crush. Yes, I was in God's beautiful country. Those were indeed the good old days. That's what I remember from my early childhood. After my adolescent and teenage years, I graduated from high school in that little, small town in Georgia. I attended college at Florida A&M University, graduated and decided to move back to New York, where I had some family and lots of fond memories. I can imagine that my soulmate had similar experiences, like I had. He comes from an African island off the east coast of South Africa, Madagascar. His family was well-off people whose predecessors were invested in real estate, and they continued with the family business. When he was a young adolescent, and because he was extremely talented in singing and playing instruments, his family decided to move closer to the United States so he could pursue a career in music. It was his dream to become an international performer. They moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands, where his parents began to make connections with the music industry on the mainland of the U.S., and he formed an African band with a more modern sound that had infused African music and sometimes reggae music in it. Although I am not certain, I can imagine that in his early childhood years, he remembers beaches where he walked and played in the sand with his family and friends, while water waves were crashing onto shore. There were trees blowing in the wind, untamed land, hills, and beautiful mountains. He probably also can remember old shack houses and dirt roads. I'm sure there were beautiful, bright blue day skies and wonderful clear night skies with millions of stars. He probably ate fresh tropical fruit like mango, bananas, guava, pineapples, pomegranate, passion fruit, coconuts, papaya, and lots of vegetables. He played with his family, friends, cousins, and had many good times. He may remember similar church services of singing and praising God. He may have grown up also listening to the same kind of music in church as I, because his family religion was Christian. When we listened to music that was out of church, we listened to Black American music from the 60s and 70s. For him, I'm sure he also listened to legendary African and reggae artists from the 60s and 70s. As a subculture, we had many good times dancing and enjoying family, as many Black and African people did back in those days. I also have an affinity for African music, something I really started exploring since the early 2000s. We are also nostalgic people. We love the old times and the simplicity of life like farming. As the years went by and he grew up into his adolescent and teenage years, seeing something very special in him, his parents and family began grooming him and teaching him the lessons needed to succeed in the music business. They carved a path for him and worked to get him the exposure he needed so that the world could also be a witness to the blessing that he is and God's plan for him. So even though we are so far apart in this world and our life paths took on completely different journeys as we grew in age, our stars have kept us connected with similar experiences that we have had in our lives. If we were together, he would always be naturally inspired. I would be the one person that could bring him back to his authentic self. There would have been a oneness with our spirits because of our similar personalities, cultures, and the similar ways that we love. One might say a girl from his exact culture would probably know him better than any other. That could be true, but infusions of similar cultures can sometimes be magical and interesting, like African Caribbeans and African Americans, or Africans and indigenous Asian and Indian people, or Americans, Australians, and British people, black and white. They are people who are similar because they have a society culture, or an ethnicity, or both in common, but are not exactly the same. A great example of a couple who are similar are the Obamas. Even though they are from the same country and are the same ethnicity, the part of the country that the president comes from, Hawaii, is a subculture within America and therefore different than a mainland African American neighborhood, which is where the First Lady is from and is also a subculture in America. However, their ethnicity is what makes this relationship bond a little more ironclad and, in my opinion, a big reason for his success. Because of their ethnicity, they have more of a complete understanding of each other, mentally, physically, and spiritually. There is no way the first black president of the United States could have ever gotten through 8 years of being this country's president without that kind of deep understanding and connection with someone. She is his rock. She knows him like no other. She gives him the strength he needs and brings him back to his authentic self. She keeps him grounded. Because of their ethnicities, they are more apt to be completely comfortable with each other. She understands how he feels when he is hurt, being persecuted, discriminated against, and called names. Only she can truly understand how he feels. Only she knows how to lift his spirit, because she knows what he needs. She is his ride or die chick. She will never abandon him because it runs too deep, it's in the blood, even though he was raised by his mom and grandparents who were Caucasian. One could argue the same argument for the Caucasian side of the president. That could be true, but when a person is mixed-raced, it depends on what the individual identifies himself as, and let's face it, you have to identify yourself as something because we, unfortunately, do not live in a world where identity does not make a difference. Even if you do not want to identify yourself as something, guess what? Society will do it for you. Recognizing differences is not a bad thing, because our differences should be celebrated, loved, and respected by one and all. Again, sadly, this is not the case in this world. In this world, insecure groups of people have taken advantage of and have exploited other groups of people to gain wealth, control, and dominance, thereby developing a false sense of superiority. This caused divisions due to unequal treatment and exploitation of the group being taken advantage of. Naturally, the exploited group will develop closer bonds due to the same experiences. Add those experiences to a natural genealogy likeness, and the bond becomes inseparable. So that is why most of the time, ethnicity can play a big part in having a very close bond with someone, and that is part of what makes the Obamas a powerhouse couple. Understand me, I believe that people should be able to love whomever they want to love, no matter race or culture. However, there is no disputing that similarities and sameness bring a better understanding, a sameness in the way that they think, understand, and feel, because they have had similar and sometimes the same experiences due to ethnicity and culture. I feel that for someone to completely be in tune spiritually, He needs a deep mental, physical, and spiritual connection with a significant person in his life. My special one loves deeply, and he is loyal. He seems not to be a womanizing type of man. I know this because we have very similar personalities due to our zodiac sign. Therefore, the significant person in his life has to be everything to him. And that is why that kind of deep connection is needed for someone like him. No, it's not necessary for every relationship to have a deep connection as such. Deep connections in relationships can develop through many things, even with people of different races and cultures. But in my opinion, for people who are great leaders, not just a leader, but a great leader, it is a must for them to reach their fullest potential. So why me? Because we fit together like two puzzle pieces. No, two puzzle pieces are exactly the same, but they have something in common and a special connection. No other two pieces will fit together the way they do, and there is no substitute. Those two pieces are the only two pieces that fit. We are in common with each other through our ethnicity and culture, and we would have a very special connection through our zodiac personality traits and the way we love. There would be a natural love and respect for one another because we both would instinctually understand what the other needs. That type of understanding is what's needed for someone that is in his special position. I know that I would know how to love him and keep him in love with me. I know that he would know how to love me and keep me in love with him. Our similar personalities, similar backgrounds, and our natural loving ways will create a deep love and understanding for each other. And for those reasons, I believe he is my soulmate. So here is my version of what should have happened in this world, but because of fortunate and unfortunate life circumstances in this world, it did not. Therefore, it happened in the parallel world